Okay, so I decided to do a little video about why I'm now completely vegan. In the past, I was what you call a semi-vegetarian. Actually, my parents were vegan until I was 5 years old. My mom, she was vegan through her entire pregnancy, giving birth to me, and I was a healthy child, so as long as you eat healthy and you eat a variety of food, you can be a healthy baby. That just goes to show, oh my gosh, all the fears about a vegan pregnancy are just misfounded. I even remember when I took this home ec class back when I was in high school, how the teacher, she kind of was old-fashioned in her ideas, and she'd be like, well, people can't be vegetarian or vegan during their pregnancy. And I remember, well, when we were younger, my parents were entirely vegan before they became just, regular vegetarians again, because they wanted to go back to eating eggs and consuming dairy. So I said to her, I said, my mom was vegan when she gave birth to me until I was 5. And actually, some of the repercussions of having grown up vegan meant that I never really liked dairy products. I always had an aversion to anything dairy. And I always thought that made me so odd, like growing up, because my parents wanted to be vegetarians again. I think they didn't realize at the time that you can be a vegan and you can get, protein from just a plant-based diet. They didn't completely understand that. Well, they were vegan, but you have to understand in the 70s it was just a different idea. Like, the ideas of being vegan were more like what Jethro Kloss wrote about in his book. It wasn't as well known, So essentially, they knew about soy milk and things like that. Actually, I think Jethro Kloss's book was a little bit ahead of its time, because he did talk about how you could make different nut milks and things. But I guess most people being vegetarian, that's already limited for them, so they went back to being vegetarian. But I will say, I never liked dairy. I had a really hard time drinking milk. My mom would buy different things like chocolate so I could put it in the milk, and I'd drink it really super fast. And I never really liked cheese. I would eat it on pizza, but I'd have to have a ton of sauce on it to cover up. Like, even a few years ago when I was making pizzas, it'd have to be really saucy, and I just never liked dairy, and I thought, oh, that makes me so weird. So yeah, I did start eating more meat in elementary school because I was kind of pressured by other kids, like, oh, you don't eat meat? And just, I remember stories like this boy making fun of me because I had this vegetarian chili. He's like, he read the ingredients. It was like one of these little things of vegetarian chili that you could buy at the Loma Linda market. And he's like, there's beans in here, and there is soy meat. It's not real meat. And I just felt like I was pressured at that time, like, to be accepted, you had to eat chicken, and I felt like that would make me more accepted. In fact, one of the funny things my mom was telling me recently, she goes, it's so funny that you're completely vegan now, because do you remember when you were in high school you said that you were going to eat hamburgers just to show me, like, to be rebellious? And that is pretty funny, because I never really ate hamburgers. I think I had 2 in my entire life, and that made me sick. And yes, I could eat chicken because I was more used to that, but I just never really did the red meat thing. But also, even with having ate chicken in the past, I never felt comfortable preparing it. It always kind of made me feel sad and really grossed out. And I just remember, like, one time a few years ago being completely disgusted because we got this fried chicken from Food for Less, and it was just like the bones were exploding and there was marrow coming out of the bones. And I just remember being revolted by that and never liking to prepare the chicken. And if I ate the chicken, like, I love to cook, but I never liked handling raw meat. I just didn't like it. It made me feel sad and revolted and disgusted, and I did it, but it was really hard. And the very last time that I attempted to actually make something that was meat related was a couple years ago, around Thanksgiving. It was after Thanksgiving, actually. My sister had given me a turkey because she'd bought an extra one. So I attempted to make this turkey, and I remember feeling sad and disgusted by having to take the parts out of the turkey. And I started thinking, I was just having a lot of like soul searching at that time, and I'd been watching more, vegan videos on YouTube, which were popping up, and I started realizing that veganism was really a viable option. And in the past I'd purchased soy milk and things like that, and I think it just started to come together in the fall of 2013. I started buying soy milk. I never really enjoyed milk that much anyway, and soy milk was a revelation to me, and so is almond milk. Just, that I can buy this and it's good and it's creamy and it doesn't have that, I don't know, that taste that dairy milk had, that I was never a huge fan of. And then I also, after that turkey experience, I decided, I don't want to prepare raw meat anymore. And watching, what was it? Oh yeah, some of those they're documentaries. I guess they're real documentaries in a way, but I think they're kind of staged a little bit, like Texas Ranch House and Frontier House, when, the people, they have to prepare the animal and kill the animal, and just thinking, like, if I were in that situation, would I want to kill a chicken? And coming to the realization that I want it. I've always helped, my parents in my garden. I used to garden a little bit more, actually, in my backyard, but I found that where I live is just very shady, so it's hard to grow things, except for morning glories. I used to grow tomatoes, but it was quite a bit of a struggle to grow tomatoes in my little backyard. Once I moved to a sunnier location, it'd be more of a viable option. But I always realized that, picking fruits and vegetables, that's enjoyable. Like chopping up a potato, chopping up an apple, that's not revolting, but it makes you sad, and it makes me a little squeamish, and I don't apologize for that. And actually, that experience was really good, because it helped me come to the realization that I didn't have to eat meat anymore. And one time my mom wanted us to be completely vegetarian for a reason, and she was right. And I decided to take it to the next step forward by going vegan. And going vegan is not difficult or hard. It's very simple. You're not going to lack nutrition. There are ethical reasons that people are vegans. People who eat meat, they're not going to understand that. They're just going to say things to you like, I like my meat. Even when I was semi-vegetarian, I didn't want to eat meat every single day of the week, and I still had those issues with preparing it, of course. And if you ordered a veggie burger off the menu, people would have the biggest issue with that. If you went to a group breakfast and you decided to get fruit instead of like bacon and eggs, people would ask you, are you a vegetarian? And I'd be like, well, I'm a semi-vegetarian. I wasn't a complete vegetarian, but I was much more vegetable based than, the majority of people. We went shopping at the Loma Linda Market. I'm very familiar with how, the Seventh-day Adventist community eats. I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist myself, but I know about vegetarianism, and I am familiar with veganism. So over the this last holiday, it's the second holiday that I haven't ate meat, and I haven't ate turkey, and some people still are surprised by that. Like, how can you go a whole Thanksgiving and not eat turkey? Well, one thing, in the last 2 years, I have been a super active person, and I could never drop below a certain weight. Like, I just could not get below 140. I just couldn't do it, because I'm not into eating small portions. I like to eat a generous portion, and I don't apologize for having an appetite. And I think having an appetite is wonderful. If you're an active person, there is nothing wrong with eating a good portion of food. I just don't apologize for that at all. So I was never what you consider a thin person in my early to mid 30s and in my late 20s. No, I just wasn't. In my early 20s, I had dropped weight, but that was just from running a large amount. I was never one of these people that wanted to go on a portion controlled diet. It just didn't appeal to me, because I like food and I don't feel guilty for having an appetite. Some people, they don't like the idea that a woman can eat a couple plates of large food, and I don't know why that bothers people. But ever since I've gone vegan, and I'm a very, very plant-based vegan where I make a lot of things from scratch. I don't eat tons of bread, just, to throw that out there. there are certain other things that I think help along the way, like cutting out soda, not eating lots of bread, because I don't feel that I need to eat bread every single day. Like, I love rice and beans. I love lentils and rice. I love potato bakes. And I like to get starches in other forms, like, you know, drinking a smoothie. I don't think a smoothie is a bad thing. Like, I used to love to bake, but every time I baked an apple pie, I would sort of just eat it myself in 2 days. And that's a lot of pastry. Ironically, I was making vegan apple pies at that time, but, you know, because I've always made an oil crust. So, but, you know, I did cut back on other things, but taking the meat out of the equation, taking the dairy out of the equation, and the bread and the soda, that really helped me finally get down to a weight where I can eat a generous portion at dinner. I don't feel deprived. I have no interest in these diets where people eat these little portions. If that works for you, that's great. I don't want to obsess about calories. Occasionally I will have, you know, a sweet or something like that, a treat that I bake. And yeah, I put real sugar in it or maple syrup in it. I do not want to deprive myself. Life is short, so, you know, there's many good aspects to being vegan. First off, it's good for the animals. It's good for the environment. And yes, it's also good, you know, if you want to lose a little bit of weight. But I will preface that by saying you have to kind of know, like, what foods will not work for your body and might work for other people. Like, for instance, bread is like a no-go zone for me. I used to love bread. Me and my dog would eat a whole loaf of wheat bread together. I used to make funnel cakes when I was in high school. I love starches. I love bread. But I noticed, like, when I stopped eating all the sandwiches, that was another contributing factor that helped me lose weight. And also, just there's other things you can eat that are just as satisfying and filling. And I'm not trying to say, oh, bread is evil, but I just personally, I don't want to eat bread every day. And not eating the chicken a few times a week, that helped a lot. What is the state of, like, faux meats? Like, I like some of them, but I want to be honest with you. After I've tried a few more recently, I'm not, like, a huge fan. Like, the hugest fan in the world, because I've had those growing up. Like, I used to eat Prosage growing up, which is a vegetarian. It's not vegan, unfortunately. I wish they would turn Prosage vegan, because that stuff, it's pretty good. It tastes good. It has the most healthful ingredients in the world, but I know what, like, the vegetarian meats taste like, and they're not really my favorite. Like, I have to be honest, I kind of just like lentils and rice. Lentils and rice and I love each other forever. And I love black beans and rice with salsa wrapped in a big tortilla. It's just pretty good stuff. Like, there's this, I can make that stuff myself, but there's also this one local restaurant where you can get really good, like, black beans, rice, fresh salsa wrapped in a big tortilla, and that to me is just so satisfying. I don't ever get cravings for steak. And what kind of cravings do I get? Well, I wasn't eating peanuts for a year because I felt like, you know, I didn't want to be eating a lot of hard peanuts after, you know, I had some pain in a tooth, but then that subsided, so I did start eating again. I do get cravings for things like peanuts. I really like peanuts. And sometimes, occasionally, I do make a pie, but not like I was a couple of years ago. And I just believe in eating lots of whole foods and not feeling guilty about it. And I also think, you know, every vegan's entitled to feel how they want themselves, but perhaps, like, one thing I've noticed with vegans, it seems lately like some vegans like to criticize other vegans, say that vegan's not eating optimally. This is how you could eat optimally as a vegan. However, why don't we support each other more as vegans? That's just my little feeling. Like, whatever works for one vegan, that's great. It doesn't have to work for you, but I think if somebody's eating sufficient number of calories, like if they're not on some weird restricted diet, why are we going to critique how they eat? What about the people whose eyes are bugged out when they go through the In-N-Out drive-thru? By the way, in Southern California, if you live here, people, every time you go by In-N-Out, they're like, their eyes are bugged out. They're like, whoa, and they're acting like they're at church. There are people that are more excited about In-N-Out than probably going to church. And I've always been the kind of vegan that, you know, it works for me. I really think it's great. It's easier to talk to other vegans these days about how I eat because I don't like the preachy element of veganism, which is the one reason I'm more of an individual than an activist. And that is always going to be frowned upon by some vegans, but I take it. I've always been an individual. I didn't like it when I had to participate in certain religious things as a kid and those experiences. And if I'm going to talk about being vegan, I'm going to just do it in my own way on my channel. I'm never going to feel guilty or feel bad that I didn't do it in a more activist kind of way, because there are many different types of vegans in the world. What about the introverted vegan? You know, on my YouTube videos I talk more, but in daily life I tend to be a bit more introverted. I could never imagine going up and telling people, well, you should eat that way. Actually, it's kind of the opposite. I still feel kind of like shy about sharing how I eat, and it's been that way all my life. Even being a semi-vegetarian, people just thought, wow, you're so weird because you ordered a veggie burger and not a real hamburger. That was always, like, that always threw people off. I don't know why. But I'm just saying, you know, like, do what you can. If I think being vegan is great. It really works for me. I feel better ethically as a vegan. I have no interest in killing animals or hunting. I believe in peace, actually. And that's another thing. Some vegans are criticized because they're into peace and they're called pacifists, as in they're passive. Great, I embrace that. I love peace. I want to be at peace with myself, with others. If you don't like my opinions, great. There are many other people in the world who will say things that you enjoy better. And I think ultimately, if you're going to be a vegan, yes, do it for animals, do it for yourself. But don't, like, do it because you're just trying to please someone else, because it won't work. If you're just trying to please someone else, it's just going to be a fad thing. It's going to be like these celebrities who try veganism for a while and then they go back. And that's another thing. Also, why do we always talk about what celebrities are doing and how they're role models? Because I've never felt that a celebrity was a role model. When I was growing up, I was interested in history documentaries and reading history books and doing art and things like that and going for walks in the forest. Not every teenager is obsessed with role models, and that's probably why recently some teenagers have started speaking out against, like, certain parts of social media. I don't think social media is bad, but it's not all about the celebrities. You have to live your life for you. You can't live your life just because a celebrity does a certain thing. And sometimes it's good not to always, like, be watching movies all the time, because, you know, movies can be fun, but they are a bit of fantasy. You know, shut off the TV, shut off the computer, get away from it for a while. I think at the end of the day, like, just having some other things going on in your life besides just always being worried about, like, how others do things is good too. And if you're gonna be a vegan, do it because you really want to, and then it will stick, and you won't go back, and you won't have these fantasies about hamburgers. Like, you will be vegan for the reason that is true to you, not because someone else thought you should be, not because a celebrity advocated it. At the end of the day, being a vegan is wonderful and amazing. I'm never going to convince even 90% of the population to want to be a vegan. I'm a realist. It works for me, but I'm doing it in my pacifist way, just like keeping more to myself. I think that's the key. Doing it in a way that works for me, and that, at the end of the day, is the best thing. Thanks for watching.